The fellowship hall smelled like baked chicken, buttered rolls, and sweet tea strong enough to keep the choir awake through a long second sermon. It was one of those Sundays people look forward to all week, the kind where the sanctuary feels lighter, where the hugs last a second longer, where the announcements run late because everybody keeps clapping for somebody's granddaughter graduating or somebody's nephew coming home. Then the potluck, the real ceremony. Foil pans lined up along the serving tables like polished silver. Steam fogged up the kitchen windows. Kids slipped between folding chairs with that fearless energy only children have. Half the time they're laughing, half the time they're one bad turn away from colliding with someone carrying hot macaroni. New Hope Baptist wasn't a huge church, but it was steady, solid, generational. The building had seen decades of funerals and baptisms, heartbreak and weddings, and a whole lot of quietly answered prayers. People knew each other's stories, even if they didn't say them out loud. And if you asked the congregation who kept things from falling apart on a busy Sunday, they'd name the pastor, sure. Then they'd name Harold Price. Harold had the kind of presence that didn't announce itself. He was 62, tall, a little stooped now, with a close gray beard and calm eyes that didn't flinch easily. He'd been a church usher so long most people couldn't remember New Hope without him. He knew which door stuck, which hallway light flickered, which elder needed help on the last step, which teenager was smiling too hard because something was wrong at home. He wasn't security. He didn't act like a cop. He didn't carry himself like he was looking for trouble. He carried himself like he was trying to keep trouble from finding the building. That Sunday, the potluck was his assignment. The pastor didn't have to tell him twice. Harold was already in the groove before the first casserole hit the warming tray, standing near the double doors, watching the flow, guiding people without making them feel guided. A small gesture here, a quiet word there. No embarrassment, no confrontation, just smooth, safe movement. The kitchen was busy and tight, the way church kitchens always are when love gets served on a schedule. Volunteers in aprons moved around each other like a practiced dance. Knives out, hot pans moving, lids coming off, sharp smells mixing in the air, pepper, butter, smoked meat, cinnamon, coffee. That kitchen had boundaries even if nobody posted a sign. You didn't wander back there unless you were helping, which is why Harold noticed her immediately. A white woman in her mid-40s stepped into the hallway like she'd walked into the wrong movie and decided the set should change to fit her. Sharp haircut, expensive tote bag, no church smile, no good morning. She did a quick scan of the fellowship hall, not like a visitor looking for a friend, more like someone checking exits. She didn't head to the serving line. She didn't pick up a plate. She didn't take a seat. She went straight for the kitchen door. Harold watched for a beat, giving her room to be normal. Visitors get lost sometimes. People wander. Sometimes a new person doesn't know the flow. But she pushed through the swing door anyway, slipping into the tightest, hottest part of the building, like she belonged there. Harold followed at an unhurried pace and stopped in the doorway, leaving space between them. His voice stayed polite, gentle. That same tone he'd used 1,000 times. He reminded her the serving line was out front. He explained the kitchen was for volunteers. He even gave her the practical reason: hot pans, knives, crowded space, people getting burned if someone turned at the wrong time. The woman turned fast. Her eyes moved over Harold in a way that made his shoulders tighten. Face, hands, belt. A quick inventory, like she was searching for danger she'd already decided existed. "I'm fine," she said, clipped. Harold nodded. "Just trying to keep it safe back here, ma'am." She scoffed. Safe, right. That word landed with a little sting. Harold felt it. The implication, the attitude behind it. She lifted her phone slightly, not fully recording, but ready. "Who are you? Security?" "I'm an usher," Harold said. "Deacon Harold Price." Her expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened, like she'd found the angle she wanted. "I'm here with the city," she said. "Church kitchens have to follow health standards." Harold blinked once. Real inspectors didn't come during a potluck with a tote bag and no introduction. They didn't drift in like they were browsing. And they definitely didn't get offended at a basic question. Still, Harold didn't accuse her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't step in her space. He asked calmly for identification. That's when the air changed. The woman's face flashed hot. "Are you accusing me of something?" "No, ma'am," Harold said, still even. "If you're with the city, you'll have ID. That's all I'm asking." She stepped closer. "Get away from me!" Harold took a small step back, palms open, body angled slightly away, everything in his posture saying, "I'm not touching you. I'm not blocking you. I'm not escalating this." And then she made sure everyone heard her. "Don't touch me!" she snapped, loud enough to turn heads in the kitchen. A spoon clattered into a pan. A volunteer froze mid-step holding a hot tray. Harold felt a tightness in his stomach that wasn't fear. It was recognition. He knew what public fear could do when it chose a black man as its target. He kept his voice low. "No one is touching you. I'm asking you to step out unless you're helping." Her eyes locked on him like he'd just given her what she needed. Then she said it, clear, dramatic, confident. "This man is threatening me." For half a second, Harold felt like time slowed because the accusation didn't match reality in any direction. There was no threat, no aggression, no cornering, no getting in her face. He was standing in a doorway, giving space, using his calm church voice. But she was already moving, already walking briskly out of the kitchen, phone to her ear before she hit the hallway. And she didn't keep it quiet. Her voice carried into the fellowship hall, slicing through the potluck noise like a siren. "I need police," she said, loud. "There's a man here. He followed me into the kitchen. He's aggressive. I don't feel safe." Aggressive. Threat. Those words do work in America. Dirty work. The sound in the room thinned. People started whispering. Heads turned. Some faces tightened with worry. A few people looked at Harold like they were trying to reconcile the man they knew with the story being spoken about him. Harold didn't chase her. He didn't argue in the hallway. He didn't want the situation to turn into a shouting match she could twist into proof. He headed toward the pastor's office. He wanted witnesses, order, the kind of adult structure that kept lies from running wild. He made it halfway down the corridor when he felt the shift again. Eyes on him, a hush following him like a shadow. The woman had turned in the hall and pointed across the room. Not a scream. Not a dramatic scene. Just that simple gesture, like she was selecting the villain in a story she'd already written. "That's him," she said. 10 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up. 2, for a church potluck. The officers walked in with the posture that changes a room immediately. Hand near the belt, eyes scanning, voices clipped. One officer was younger, tense, sharp, like he'd been ready to control a problem the moment he heard the word threat. The other was older, quieter, reading the room before he decided what he thought. The woman rushed to them and spoke fast, animated, voice rising and falling in the familiar places. She described being cornered, being followed, feeling like she might be harmed. Harold stood several feet away, shoulders squared, hands down, calm, because calm was his default, and because he knew what a sudden movement could be interpreted as. The older officer asked Harold who he was. "Harold Price," he said. "I'm an usher here. Deacon." The younger officer stepped close. Too close. "Any weapons?" "No." "Turn around." A murmur rolled through the fellowship hall. A child near the dessert table went quiet, sensing the fear. Ms. Rochelle, the potluck coordinator, tried to explain who Harold was, how long he'd served, how ridiculous this was. The younger officer shut her down with authority. "Ma'am, step back." Harold didn't resist. He didn't argue. He turned slowly, trying to keep the moment from turning into something worse. The handcuffs snapped shut anyway. That metallic click hit the room like a slap. A gasp rose somewhere behind Harold. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," like they were watching a nightmare that didn't belong in this building. Harold felt heat climb into his face. Not anger yet. Not fully. Something closer to humiliation, the kind that sits heavy in your chest. The woman kept talking, insisting Harold was dangerous, insisting his calm was an act, insisting she was the victim of something the cameras would never show. Pastor Williams appeared from the office then, moving fast but controlled, suit jacket open, face set. He took one look at Harold's cuffs and didn't waste time on arguments about feelings. He offered something stronger. "We have cameras," he said. The older officer's attention changed immediately. "Cameras?" Pastor Williams nodded toward the kitchen. "Kitchen and hallway, installed last year." The woman tried to wave it off, quick. "That doesn't matter. He threatened me." "But video matters. Everybody knows it matters, even people who pretend it doesn't." The older officer hesitated, then nodded. "Show me." They moved into the small office behind the kitchen where the monitor sat. A cluster of church members followed at a respectful distance, pulled along by the same instinct that makes people watch storms. You don't want it, but you can't look away. The young volunteer who handled the camera system, Marcus, a college kid home for the summer, fumbled with the controls, nervous. His hands shook as he rewound the footage. And then the kitchen cameras started doing what cameras do. They stripped the story down to the bones. There she was, entering first, slipping through the swing door without greeting anyone, without asking permission, eyes scanning like she was searching for something. She didn't move like a volunteer. She didn't move like a person about to inspect a stove. She moved like someone looking for an opportunity. There was Harold in the doorway, not inside her space. Calm voice, hands visible, body angled back, giving distance. He didn't close the gap. He didn't block her exit. He didn't touch her. The audio caught his tone, polite, measured, trying to keep the kitchen safe. And then it caught her voice, raising, dramatic, claiming she was being threatened while Harold stood steady. Then it showed her leaving the kitchen to call police, not because she was trapped, but because she wanted her version outside the kitchen before anyone could challenge it. The hallway camera filled in the rest. Harold walking toward the pastor's office, not toward her pointing at him. Officers arriving, the cuffs going on. There was no aggression to match her report. Just an accusation crafted for a quick arrest, until the video turned it into dust. The older officer stared at the screen, jaw tight. Then he looked at the younger officer and said firmly, "Take them off." The younger officer hesitated, irritation flashing across his face, then unlocked the cuffs. Harold rubbed his wrists slowly. Red marks were already rising. The woman tried to pivot. She argued that the video couldn't capture how she felt, that a look mattered, that the tone mattered, that the camera didn't show what she sensed. But the older officer asked the question that stopped her momentum cold. "If you're with the city," he said, "show me your credentials." She fumbled in her tote bag, pulling out something meaningless, then pushing it back like she'd grabbed the wrong thing. Her voice sharpened. Her confidence started leaking. "I don't have to prove anything," she snapped. The older officer's tone hardened. "You called 911 and reported a threat. That's not a casual thing. We have video. Your report is not supported." Her eyes flashed angry. "So you're taking his side?" Pastor Williams answered before the officers could. "No," he said, quiet and steady. "The truth is, taking his side." Outside, the older officer spoke with the woman privately. The younger officer avoided Harold's eyes. The woman's voice rose a few times, then dropped. You could hear the shape of the conversation without hearing the words. Questions she didn't like, answers she couldn't provide. Then, the older officer came back inside, face set. He didn't make a speech. He didn't grandstand. He told Pastor Williams he was sorry for the escalation. He told Harold he was free to go. He told the congregation the matter was being handled. And then, almost as an afterthought, he asked a question that changed the story again. "Pastor," he said, "why do you have cameras in the kitchen?" Pastor Williams replied simply, "We had money go missing from the pantry fund last year, and supplies. We got tired of guessing." The older officer looked toward the monitor. "Can you rewind further?" Marcus did, and that's when the potluck turned into something else. Because the earlier footage didn't just show the woman entering the kitchen. It showed what she did once she thought nobody important was watching. She wasn't checking temperatures. She wasn't looking at sanitation. She wasn't doing anything that looked like a city worker. She wandered toward the small office door at the back of the kitchen, where the church kept its supply cabinet keys, the petty cash envelope, and the locked drawer with donation receipts from the morning. She tried the office door handle once. Locked. She tried again, harder. Then she looked over her shoulder. Then she did something that made the room go dead quiet. She pulled a small set of keys from her tote bag and tried them, one by one, like she'd practiced. The key didn't turn. She frowned, irritated. She stepped back, glanced around, and moved toward the counter where volunteers had left a clipboard with the potluck sign-in sheet and a few envelopes. Her hand hovered near the envelopes. It didn't look like inspection. It looked like temptation. Then she heard movement, someone approaching, and she snapped back into a calm posture and walked away like she'd done nothing. The room in the office felt heavier than before, because now the lie wasn't the only problem. There'd been a purpose. Pastor Williams's face tightened in a way Harold didn't see often. The pastor was gentle by nature, but he wasn't soft when it came to protecting his people. The older officer watched the footage again, slower, eyes narrowing. He turned to the woman who had drifted back inside, looking indignant as if she was still the victim. "Ma'am," he said, "step outside. Now." Her voice rose. "This is unbelievable. I'm the one who—" The officer cut her off. controlled. Outside. When they got her outside, the older officer ran her name. Not loudly, not dramatically, just procedure. And procedure opened another door. The woman wasn't with the city. She had no affiliation. And she wasn't new to trouble. There was a prior report in a neighboring town for impersonating an inspector at a community center, plus a pending investigation connected to a small nonprofit that had missing funds. Not a conviction yet. Not enough for a dramatic movie ending, but enough to show a pattern. When the older officer walked back in, he didn't look annoyed anymore. He looked serious. He asked Pastor Williams if the church wanted to press charges for trespass and for filing a false report. Then he asked Harold if he was willing to make a statement. Harold swallowed. He was tired in a deep way, not physical, something older. That feeling of realizing how close you came to being dragged out of a place you loved because someone decided your presence was dangerous. He rubbed his wrists again. The red marks were still there, real proof of how fast the situation had flipped. Harold nodded once. "Yes," he said. "I'll make a statement." The woman tried one last move before she left. She looked Harold dead in the face and said, sharp, "You don't know who you're messing with." Harold didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult her. He said something quiet, almost sad. "I'm not messing with you," he said. "You walked into my church and lied." She glared, then looked away like she couldn't stand being seen clearly. She was escorted out. The potluck continued, technically. People still ate. Plates still got filled. You can't unbake chicken. You can't unmake macaroni. Church ladies don't let food go to waste, even when the day goes sideways. But the mood was bruised. People moved differently, spoke differently. Some came up to Harold and apologized, face tight with shame. Others avoided him entirely, like if they didn't look at him, they wouldn't have to face how quickly they'd gone silent when the cuffs came out. Harold didn't punish anyone with words. He was too tired for that. Later, after most people left, Harold sat alone in the sanctuary for a few minutes. The building was quiet again. The kind of quiet he usually loved. But that day had planted something. He stared at the pulpit and thought about all the years he'd served, all the doors he'd opened, all the arguments he'd diffused before they got loud, all the times he'd kept things safe without anyone noticing. And he wondered what safety meant if a lie could erase his reputation in 10 minutes. The next morning, the local neighborhood group had already picked up rumors. Somebody's cousin knew somebody. Somebody said Harold got aggressive. Somebody said the church called police first. You could see the same ugly pattern trying to form, a story building itself out of nothing. Pastor Williams didn't fight it with a paragraph online. He didn't argue in comment sections. He knew better. He handled it the church way, but with modern tools. He had the church attorney send a letter to the police department requesting body cam footage for the record. He requested the 911 call recording. He also made sure the church footage was backed up in multiple places because technology fails at the most convenient times when people don't want truth. Then he did something else. He met with the older officer in person. Not to yell, not to accuse, to be clear, to make sure the case didn't get softened into a misunderstanding, because it wasn't. The older officer turned out to be the difference between the day ending in humiliation and the day ending in accountability. He told Pastor Williams quietly that he'd seen these situations before: an accusation, a crowd, a nervous younger officer trying to control the scene, a black man forced into compliance because the alternative is worse. He didn't say it like a confession. He said it like a man admitting the system has grooves, and too often the same people get pushed into them. The police department charged the woman with filing a false report and trespass. The impersonating a city official part was trickier: legal wording, proof, intent. But the footage of her claiming she was with the city while refusing to show ID didn't help her. Harold's name still got dragged through gossip for a week, though. That's how it works. The lie is loud and immediate. The truth is slower, quieter, and usually requires paperwork. And Harold could feel it. People he didn't know started looking at him differently when he ran errands. He noticed a few familiar faces in the neighborhood who suddenly became interested in their phones when he walked past. It annoyed him more than he wanted to admit. He'd spent his life being steady. Now, he had to be steady under a stain that shouldn't have existed. Then came the first hearing. Harold didn't want to go. He wasn't looking for a victory lap. He was looking for closure, for the world to set the record straight in a way that didn't depend on people believing him. Pastor Williams insisted. The church attorney insisted. A few deacons insisted. So, Harold put on a clean suit, simple tie, and sat in a courtroom that smelled like old carpet and fluorescent lights. The woman sat on the other side in a neat blouse, hair perfect, expression offended, like she was the one being harassed. Her attorney tried to frame it as confusion, miscommunication, a misunderstanding in a crowded kitchen. The judge listened with the kind of patience that suggests he's heard 1,000 versions of "it's not what it looks like." Then the prosecutor introduced the footage, not as a dramatic moment, not as entertainment, as evidence. The judge watched the kitchen video and then the hallway video. He watched Harold stay in the doorway. He watched the woman escalate. He watched her walk out and point at Harold. He watched the handcuffs go on. Then he watched her trying keys on the office door. The judge leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing, and asked a question that didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. "Ma'am," he said, "why were you trying keys on a locked door in a church kitchen?" Her attorney started to speak. The judge held up a hand. "I asked her." The woman's face tightened. She attempted an explanation that didn't land anywhere. She was looking for the restroom. She was confused. She thought the office was where you check in. The judge looked at the video again. "You didn't look confused," he said. "You looked determined." That sentence changed her expression. You could see it. The moment she realized performance had limits in a room where video existed. The judge set conditions. He didn't throw the book dramatically. He didn't try to be a hero. He did something more meaningful. He treated the lie like it mattered. He ordered her to stay away from the church property. He ordered compliance requirements. He warned her in plain language that false reports endanger people and waste emergency resources. He allowed the prosecutor to pursue the charges fully. Then the judge looked at Harold briefly and said something that felt small but landed big. "Sir," he said, "I'm sorry this happened to you in a place that should have been safe." Harold nodded once. He didn't trust his voice. After court, the church didn't celebrate. They didn't treat it like a win. They treated it like a lesson. Pastor Williams announced new procedures the next Sunday without theatrics. Anyone claiming to be an inspector, official, or with the city had to check in at the office and show credentials before entering volunteer areas. The kitchen would remain volunteer-only during events, and the camera footage would be archived longer, not because they loved surveillance, because they loved their people, and sometimes love has to be practical. A teenage volunteer caught Harold near the kitchen door afterward, eyes glossy, voice small. "Mr. Harold..." "I'm sorry." Harold looked at her. He didn't rush her. He didn't lecture. "You didn't do it," he said gently. "But I saw it," she whispered. "And it was ugly." Harold nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "It was." Then he added quietly, the sentence he wished he didn't have to teach in a church hallway. Truth doesn't always win because people want it. Sometimes it wins because it's recorded. The girl swallowed and nodded hard, like she was storing the lesson somewhere deep. That afternoon, Harold stood by the double doors again as the potluck tables got folded and the last trays got wrapped in foil. He straightened a chair, picked up a napkin, helped an elder with her coat. The small things. He didn't quit. He didn't shrink. He didn't stop showing up. Because he understood something now, in a clearer, sharper way. Sometimes, the danger isn't a stranger walking in. Sometimes, it's a story someone decides to tell about you. And sometimes, the only thing that keeps that story from becoming your whole life is a camera in the corner of a church kitchen, quietly doing its job,